Hi there, everybody. This is Wendy Hernandez. Welcome back to the Family Law Insider podcast. And you have to forgive my voice because my voice is failing me. I have a cold or something. But speaking of failing, today's guest is Tiffany Hammond, and she's going to talk to us about failure and failing to win. Tiffany is a life coach with the Wellness Accomplice, and she is so wise, she is so experienced in a lot of areas, and she has a lot to offer. So if you feel like you're encountering failure in any area of your life, this is a podcast you need to listen to, and Tiffany is somebody you need to follow. And right now she has some special opportunities for people who really want to dig into their failure. So Tiffany, thank you and welcome for thank you for joining me today. Welcome and thank you for joining me today. That's what I meant to say.
I knew what you meant. Thank you for having me. It really does mean a lot to me that you've given me this forum. I appreciate it.
No problem, Tiffany. So, failure, I mean, it's such a big thing, and I don't think that any of us will ever stop failing in our lives. How do you feel about that?
I think you're right. I think that what can change, though, I talk to my kids about this all the time, my clients too. It's just kind of a regular conversation that I have with people. But pain in our life is inevitable. Pain is going to happen. We're going to get sick. We're going to have these things that we perceive as failures. We're going to have loss and change and grieving, and all of that is inevitable. The piece that we do have control over, though, is whether or not we suffer as a result of that pain. And that's really, I don't know, that's the driving force behind everything that I do in all of my coaching and in this book that I've written, in the course that I've put together, so that people can really identify the difference between the two. There's the event that creates the pain, and then there's the story we continue to tell ourselves moving forward that perpetuates the pain. That's suffering. We have control over that. We can change that.
So the next question that follows for me is, how do we change that? I know it's not easy, because I know I go through it with different things.
Yeah.
How do you change the suffering? How can you get rid of it? And is it a choice?
Yeah, there's always a point when it is a choice, but I think for a lot of people it starts off as kind of a default. What we're kind of pre-wired to identify with our pain points in the first place. We have a cognitive bias called the negativity bias. It's a survival mechanism, right? So that we can see problems before they arise, or once they've arisen, we know that that's what we need to address to keep ourselves safe and healthy. So it's not a bad thing that we kind of default to this focus on what's wrong. That is just that's just the way it is. Yet, as evolving, growing human beings, we come to a point in our lives when we do recognize we don't want to live our life that way anymore, that we can see that there's good things in our life, we can see that there are a lot of blessings around us, and it becomes an additional pain point that we layer on when we go, why can't I appreciate that? Why is my focus so heavily on the negative that I can't turn my attention to the positive? So at that point, that's kind of the crux. That's the opportunity we have to make a choice to accept the pain but deny the suffering. And really all we're doing is we're asking ourselves, this is a big question I ask everybody, that thing happened, what are you making it mean? And I think we talked about this last time too, and I'm sure you see this even with your clients. A divorce happens.
Yeah.
And that's painful. I don't care if it even goes well. It's still a painful experience. What are you making it mean? And everyone has a different story. Some people say, it means I've failed. I failed at marriage, I failed at being a wife, or I failed at being a husband. Some people make it mean I can't trust my instincts. I thought I was in love and this didn't work. That piece, what are we making it mean? That's the point we begin to massage. Okay. That's the point we begin to question and dissolve.
So how do you do that? I mean, what does the other side of these stories we're making up, what does that look like, and how does somebody get there?
Yeah. A lot of questions. The beautiful thing, okay, I've already talked about kind of the downside of this pre-wiring we have in the brain, the negativity bias. The other thing that we're wired for is curiosity. And the best thing we can start to do is identify the pain point. That what are we making it mean? Identify that story, and then ask questions of it. The brain wants to answer the question. Here's one of my favorite tools to use. Actually, this is in the book too. I call it yeah buts and true dats.
Yeah, dads and true dads. Cool.
Yeah buts and true dats.
Okay. Yeah.
So you take a piece of paper and you put it in 3 different columns. On that first column, you write down I am. So if you're feeling like a failure, but you want to feel like a success, you write down the thing that you are claiming. You're staking your claim in success. I am successful. The brain then begins to reveal the story, right? If I'm feeling like a failure and I write down I am a success, my brain's going to go, yeah, but you're in the middle of a divorce. Yeah, but you just lost your job, right? You're going to fill in those stories, and you're going to start to see and pinpoint, what am I making it mean? So you write down in the second column, we've got our first column, I am success. Second column, yeah, but. And these are all those negative stories, and you don't judge them, you just write them down. There's no judgment going on. We're not calling these bad thoughts. And then in the third column, we write down, I call them true dats. Yes, and it's true that. So I can say, yes, it's true that I'm going through a divorce. That is true. And I know from past experience of walking through failure and walking the hot coals that I will come out stronger. And I know that staying in this marriage is going to perpetuate my pain, not heal my pain. And so what you begin to do is you drop the resistance, because what happens typically when we're fighting against failure, our first question is, how do we stop feeling like a failure? How do we stop that? Well, even in trying to resist that failure, we're creating more of that sense of failure, right?
Yes.
Earlier I said we see all these blessings in our life and we can't turn our attention to them. We go, I've got this house, I've got food on my table, why can't I be grateful? We're adding an extra layer of pain called guilt. I feel guilty because I can't feel grateful, right?
Yes, that's huge.
It is huge. And then if you carry that long enough, it turns to shame, right? The difference between guilt and shame. Guilt is I've done something bad. Shame is I am something bad. So if we let that perpetuate, we let it keep going, we create these additional layers. So the beautiful thing about this practice, the yeah buts and the true dats, is that we begin to drop that resistance to the yeah but. Yeah, but I'm going through divorce. So rather than say, I have to force my way into the positive side, we're going to accept that. We're going to say, yes, it's true. My divorce or my marriage has failed. Yes, that's true. And I have a new beginning. And I'll be stronger for it. And I'm developing a great inner circle that's supporting me. And we begin to compile a whole separate list of evidence that we're not denying the failure, right? I'm putting it in quotes because in my heart of hearts I don't believe it's a failure. But we're not denying the failure. We're giving it its due voice so that it feels heard and it shuts up.
Yes.
And now we're compiling a whole separate list of ways that this is going to serve us. Now this is a practice. We don't do it once and then we're magically cured of our suffering, right? We come back to it, we do it again. But to answer the question, how do you begin to dissolve that sense of failure? First piece is accepting that it's there. What we resist in life persists in life. That thing we push back hardest against is the thing that keeps coming back in front of us. So we accept it first. Yes, failure, I've heard you.
Yes.
And then we take that next step. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. It makes total sense. Thank you for that, Tiffany. So, are we doing this exercise? I mean, how often are we doing this exercise? Are we doing it for the giant failures? Are we doing it for the small failures? How often are we doing this for it to be effective in our lives and to kind of, can we overcome the negativity bias? And that's another question I have.
Yes, both, yes. So first of all, wonderful question because it's very different for each person, but I'm going to tell you some things that I help people clue into. So one of the questions, it's hard to catch our thoughts, right? It's a default for a reason. We have practiced these stories about how we have failed in one way or another over and over and over again. And our confirmation bias has looked almost exclusively at the proof that our failure is the correct story, that that is truth. The nature of confirmation bias is we actually ignore the evidence that says we're a success, right? So that default is very, very strong. So a lot of times we can't catch the story because it's there. It's so regular. It's white noise now. We hardly even catch it. So there's a couple ways, first of all, that we can catch it. And this is in answer to the question, how often do we practice this? The first way is that, and I love this way the most because a lot of times we can catch something in our body, the physical pain point, before we can catch the thought. So if I were to ask you, we're using the context of divorce, so let's just stick there. If I were to ask you, where does the failure of your marriage show up in your body? A lot of people, it shows up in the throat. That's expression, lack of self-expression. But it can come anywhere. You know, the solar plexus, I feel a knot in my tummy, that's self-worth. There's a lot of different places it can come up in the body. But wherever that is, that becomes the thing that triggers the attention to the thought. So if I'm feeling like a failure in my marriage and I feel it in my throat, now every time I go, oh, oh, wait a second, is that being triggered by this story? Oh my gosh, I was cleaning my house and I was mad at my ex and I was, right? So I wasn't triggered into the thought, but I could find the physical point. Then I would do this practice or any of the other practices in the book, right? But then I would know to turn my attention. Here's an opportunity for me to dissolve that story. Here's an opportunity to drop the suffering. So that's one way. The other way that I like too is just a simple paying attention to our language. We so readily use words like I have to, I need to. We can say, you know what, I feel like it's time to rebrand my business. And once we say that, we've chosen a rebrand, for instance, right?
Yes.
And yet, as soon as it comes down to the to-do list, we go, I have to. So what I need to, I have to talk to a branding expert, and I have to get my website, and I have to talk to, I have to, I need to, I ought to, I should. And this becomes heavy language. So we are, without even realizing it, creating a density in our thoughts that is one more thing I have to do. So one way to catch these moments is to watch your have-tos. Your have-tos and need-tos. The other language that comes up is when people constantly say, you know, so my challenge is, my struggle is, the hard thing is, and everybody has their own verbiage around that. But as soon as you start picking up that, that's an opportunity to lay down that struggle. That doesn't have to be true. The hardship doesn't have to be true. We can instead say, my practice is, my opportunity is. And it sounds contrived sometimes because people say, well, I don't say I have problems, I say I have challenges, you know. It can sound a little contrived, yet the brain is tuned into that language. It understands, oh, this is something that is onerous and heavy, I have to do it. This is my, you know, this is my struggle.
Yeah.
Versus, I want to do it. I choose to do this. You know what's next for me? That's curious and playful. So laying down that heavy language makes a big difference. And if we catch ourselves saying it, we know it's time to go to one of these practices. Sorry, I talked for a long time there. Is that?
No, you know, and like I told Tiffany, like I told you before, I hope you talk a lot so people don't have to hear me talking. Sounds awful, but I do love that you gave examples of words that we could use in place of I have to or I need to, because I know a lot of people, including myself, do that a lot, and it is happy. It makes it feel like, oh, God, I have to do this thing, and it's so awful, and how can that be fun? But
Yes.
if you turn it around, this is what I want to do, this is what I'm choosing to do, it does feel lighthearted. It makes you feel a little more excited about what you're going into, I think.
I do too. And we create, as children, we created so naturally. We created stories and we narrated our day with song and we created pictures. And it didn't come from this I have to create place. It came from a very playful and curious place. So what I'm suggesting with some of these exercises in the book, even with the yeah buts and the true dats, let's get playful and curious about what's possible during this process. How is this going to strengthen me? How is this something that is going to ultimately be part of my success? I mean, look, one of the things I do in my workshops all the time is I say, tell me a moment you're most proud of. Now, I'm using this exercise to help people identify the things they're naturally good at, but there's an interesting takeaway here in this exercise because without exception, the moments people are most proud of themselves are related to something they overcame.
Yes, that's
I
right.
thought this was going to be a horrible experience, and yet I did this, I can't, that is something we can see in retrospect. We can say, yeah, that was hard, but I gained all of this stuff. What I'm suggesting is we can do that real time. Rather than wait for 5-10 years to pass and you're in some workshop and somebody says, tell me a time you're proud of, I'm saying real time in the moment we can be proud of exactly where we are and we can consciously grab onto and appropriate the benefits of this experience live, real time. We can glean what we want to glean.
Yes, that's amazing, and I think the tools that you're giving people are so easy. And they're things that people can do anywhere, anytime, any place.
Yes, absolutely. I suggested a piece of paper, but once you've done it once or twice, I am success. Yeah, but true that, you can do that while you're driving.
Yeah.
You can do it while you're walking the dog. You can do it with other things too. You feel overwhelmed by your day-to-day, and gosh, I'm overwhelmed. Well, if you want your story to be that you're living with grace and ease, I am living with grace and ease. And then just let the thoughts come. The yeah buts? Okay, sure. Now we know that voice. I've heard you. And this and this other thing is true. So it's this, you're absolutely right. Not only they're easy, but you can use them whenever, with whatever story it is you've concocted. That's really doesn't have to be the only truth. Part of it is true, but it doesn't have to be the only truth, and it certainly doesn't have to define you.
Yes. So this, getting back to this, the negativity bias, I don't want to focus on it too much, but is that something we're born with, Tiffany, or is that something that's socialized?
That is something we're born with.
Oh.
And well, think, right? If a baby is comfortable, there's no reason to cry. As soon as that baby is hungry or in pain or tired or needs comfort, then they voice, right? Then there's a problem that needs tending to. So we actually are pre-wired with the negativity bias.
Okay.
It is, however, perpetuated by our upbringing, right? If we are in an environment where, actually, I'll tell you a funny story. My son, probably, I want to say like 18 months old. He was really little. Was bound and determined to pour his own juice. Bound and determined to pour his own juice. And so I put it in a smaller container so that he could pour from the smaller container to his cup. I didn't have him do the full bottle.
Right.
And he spilled and he made a mess and he cleaned it up. The onus was on him to clean it up, but I didn't make it mean to him that he had goofed up in any way. That spill didn't come with a story, right?
Yes.
Now, on the other hand, if I had either not let him do it, you're too young, now he's getting all of these other negative inputs, or if the spill, I had to see, you can't do it. Do you remember that last time you spilled? Now I'm guiding his attention to the negative part of the whole experience.
Yes.
So we do have some control in the way that we raise our children, and also in the way that we speak to ourselves about perceived failure. Does that answer the question?
It does answer the question, and it speaks to exactly what I wanted to get at was, how can we communicate with our kids in a way to not perpetuate this negativity bias.
Yeah. One of the things I do, and it's actually kind of funny, we laugh about it now because my kids will come to me, and I don't get it right all the time. I'm human too. You know, there's sometimes that they'll come to me with some perceived failure, and I go, oh, great, you know. But the consciousness I bring to the conversation that I try to do on a regular basis, I ask this question, great, what did we learn? And it's funny because for a long time, their answer was, don't do that again.
Funny.
Okay, but what specifically? Because we don't want to just memorize a bunch of scenarios we want to avoid. We want to get into the behaviors that led us to that point. So if it's, you know, bad grades, or if it's a lie you told your best friend, or whatever that thing is, we begin to dig a layer deeper. But as long as that first response isn't, well, of course you did. Well, what else would I expect from a dumb kid? And I'm not saying people are really saying that, but even energetically, that can be the response.
Right.
If instead we ask them to investigate their own perceived failure, let's find the nugget. So we have this dark cave. Let's go in. We're going to find the gem. Yes, it's still a dark cave. Yes, it's still uncomfortable to be in it. And we're going to find this piece, this nugget, that can, at some point in the future, inform your next decision.
I love that. That's excellent. That is great. So, another question. So for somebody who has reached this crux of like, okay, I recognize that I'm buying into this negativity bias and I want to change it, and they actually start to change it, yet they are living with, or they have people in their lives who are really hung up in the negativity bias. I mean, how do you coexist with that without getting sucked in again? You know, I mean, how is it possible?
I'm going to give you one example of how that is possible, and then I'm going to give you kind of a cold, hard truth.
Okay.
So I had a client that was really frustrated with her husband because while they would both come home from work, and he would go to the little family room that the kitchen was visible from, and he'd turn on the TV. She would go to the kitchen and she would help the kids with their homework. She would cook dinner. She would unload the dishes. She would, ad nauseum, right? The list goes on and on. And her frustration was that he wouldn't participate. And she would keep coming to him and she would keep asking him, this is our family time. I know it doesn't look like it because we're doing homework but these are the few hours we have when we're all together. I really want you to. So she's trying to stay in the positive. She's trying to look at it rather than this is this huge long to-do list that she's got to do. She's saying, this is our time together. And he's not buying into that story. He's not participating in that in any way. So I gave her some tools, and I said, here are some different approaches that you can take. Here are some different, how do we get curious about this? How do we get playful with this? And she left the session really excited. So fast forward a full week. She comes to me. I said, so how did it go? Did anything change? Anything loosen up? She goes, I am so mad at my husband. I said, well, what happened? She says, he didn't screw up once.
Okay.
What are you talking? She was waiting for him to go into that family room and turn on the TV so that she could use her tools. She got curious and she got playful around these tools. So her energy going into that kitchen each night was different. It was curious. It was playful. Without even realizing it, without even making a request, without asking him to do anything different, he gravitated toward that energy. And then this developed a whole different story. He didn't screw up, so she didn't get a chance to practice her tools. And then, of course, the conversation, well, you got a whole different practice, right? You got a whole different blessing of that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love it.
It is beautiful. So one part of this truth is when we work on our own garbage and we begin to dissolve this stuff in ourselves, we do show up differently. We show up more enthusiastic. We show up more playful. You know, the last piece of this book is love. It's about grace, compassion, forgiveness, clearing out that junk so you've got a clean place to start from. When we do that, our whole being changes, and the way people respond to us changes utterly. That's what happened for her, and that's what can happen for a lot of people. Now, here's the cold, hard truth. There are some people that don't like that. There are some people that don't want the dynamic to change.
Mm-hmm.
And change, even a positive one, they feel resistant to. They want to be your source of happiness. They don't want you to generate your own source of happiness. They want that codependent relationship. They want you to need something from them. So the cold, hard truth is it can work, and most of the time it does. That we can kind of, as our energy changes, we bring people with us. But there are times when people just are in absolute refusal to come into alignment with that. And then our practice is whether or not we let that go.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh, is right.
Yeah. Wow.
So
Okay.
I'd love to just like give some rosy answer and let that just be the end all be all. But
I know. Well, I could see how it could happen. So, all right. So let's talk about the book for a minute and tell people about the book Fail to Win and where you are in the project and how they can access it and support it and help themselves in the process.
Oh, yes. I'm so excited about this. So basically what I've done is I've created the system, and it is a system that allows you to come back to your own sense of self and value. And this can happen in what I call the limited mind. So we can say these are the things I value in this world. And then there's this other place that is of this expansive mind where there's this bigger piece of ourselves as we're connected to one another. I start there. We come back to brass tacks. What is it you value most? And not what do you want, right? We all have a list of what we want. But that conversation changes completely when I ask, what are you for? Then we begin the next layer, which is as soon as I start asking that, these are kind of the genesis of your yeah buts, right? The yeah buts come up. Yes, these are my values, but I still need to pay my bills, but I still need to, whatever these things are. So then we graduate into this all section, which is really this relationship between success and failure, good and bad, right and wrong, that they're not mutually exclusive things, that they're all wrapped up together. The next layer is identifying who you are and how it is you can't help but be, right? This is the is. What is it about you? And then that last piece is love. And this is that grace, compassion, and forgiveness piece so we can clear the slate and build anew. So this when you see the term fail to win, fail is an acronym, FAIL, for all is love. That's the system. And up until now, it's only been available as a telecourse, an 8-week telecourse, which has been a lot of fun, and I love doing it. And still, it's cost prohibitive for some. So I wanted to put it in a book. I wanted to create a way for people to have access to these tools that was affordable not just in money, but also in time. They can read it on their own time. And some people feel like there's some safety at risk. You're divulging a piece of yourself, and not everybody feels comfortable doing that in a group of people. Right. So there's a privacy thing too. So it was really important for me to put this in a format that kind of answered some of those obstacles for people. So I wrote the book, which is great. I've decided to publish it myself, and that comes with, professional editors, graphic designers, interior design, all of these things that a really professionally done book needs to be out in the world.
Yes.
So what I've done is I've started a crowdfunding campaign on Indiegogo. You can go to Indiegogo and search Fail to Win, or you can go to tinyurl.com/fail-to-win-coaching, and you can find it either way. The reason I wanted to do it this way is, first of all, I can get it out to more people, because a lot of people who wouldn't find me on their own might find the campaign. The other thing is there are some perks that come specifically with the pre-purchase of the book. So what you're doing with crowdfunding, if for those of you that aren't familiar with crowdfunding, is you're pre-purchasing a product, and so pre-purchased that it's not even done yet. Now my book is finished, it just hasn't been edited, right? So it's written. So there's a little delayed gratification. So the benefit to purchasing anything through a crowdfunding campaign is that you're helping fund the creation of the project, but you're also getting these other things. So my favorite perk on there is the Gaining Momentum perk. You get the book, you get the workbook, and you get some free coaching.
Yep.
So when you hit a hard point in there where your yeah buts are so big that you can't come to a true dat, you call me, we have a coaching session, and we work our way through it.
Oh, that's
So
great.
that's kind of, the genesis of the program, the book, and then what's next for the book itself.
I love it. And so what's the timeline for raising the funds? Is there a timeline?
Oh, gosh, yes. So let's see. What's today's date? Today's date is the 13th. I have got 14 days, 2 weeks exactly, left on this campaign. The final day is Thanksgiving Day. So in the next 2 weeks, once this has been funded, I can then immediately, like I said, the book is done. I can turn it around to my editor, and he's ready to go, get edits back to me. I can make those edits. I'm hoping to have the book out and in everybody's hands, signed, sealed, delivered by February. Okay. So it's not that long, and if you think about it, it's kind of the perfect time, because we're in that new year, new beginning, new start place to just clear out some of this stuff and really bring our truest selves out to the world.
It's beautiful. And so for you out there listening, I encourage you to go to, and we'll have the website Indiegogo listed on the show notes, as well as the tiny URL, but check out the different perks that Tiffany has. And the one that she mentioned, is it the Going Deep?
I think it's Gaining Momentum.
Oh, Gaining Momentum. Okay.
That's the one.
There was one that I really loved. So I think it will be well worth it, and I can't wait to see the book. And spread it to your friends, especially anybody who might be experiencing failure, which is everybody.
We do kind of have to own it, though, right? Like, we're all experiencing it, but are we really owning it?
Yeah. Spread it to them, and let's help Tiffany get this out into the world. And thank you, Tiffany, so much for joining me today and bearing with me through this voice. And I loved our conversation, and I look forward to seeing more of you.
It's such a pleasure. Thank you for being with me, even not feeling 100%. It means a lot to me that you've got my back like this. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Tiffany. And that is going to do it for this week's episode of the Family Law Insider podcast. Thank you for bearing with my voice. And remember that we're on your side when it matters most. I'll see you next time.